Hi, everybody. Welcome to the pre-summit webinar. Thank you so much for being here. We're really looking forward to seeing you next week. As our colleague and lobbyist from Cornerstone mentioned, we do have a Speaker of the House, which is great news because that means the Congress is going to start doing business again. And that's going to be great for our legislation and great for our conversations next week. So welcome, glad to have you. Peter Christian is here with us. Peter is chair of CAI's Government and Public Affairs Committee. The staff team is here as well, and we'll introduce them in just a minute. And John Busher from our lobby team at Cornerstone is also with us. So I would just want to welcome everybody, and I'd like to thank the sponsors that we have supporting this year's Advocacy Summit. Thank you to Reserve Advisors. They are our name badge sponsor. So thank you, Reserve Advisors. They are sponsoring the name badges for our Advocacy Summit. Our reception sponsor, we're having a reception from 4 to 6. On November 2nd, next week. Enterprise Bank and Trust is our reception sponsor. So thank you so much to our reception sponsor. And now I'd like to introduce the staff team. Along with me here today is Phoebe Nessis, CAI Senior Director of Government and Public Affairs, Hannah Engber, who is CAI's Manager of Government and Public Affairs, Lula Fekadu, CAI Senior Manager of Government and Public Affairs, and Ben Price, our Manager of Government and Public Affairs. I do want to give a special acknowledgement to Hannah Engber. This is Hannah's event. So Hannah has put in a lot of time and effort planning this event for us and for all of you. And she's done a phenomenal job. Well done, Hannah. Thank you. And after I introduce these next folks, I'm going to let you get the show started. So as I mentioned, we have Peter Christian, who is CAI's chair of the Government and Public Affairs Committee, Ron Pearl, who is chair of our Federal Legislative Action Committee. Peter is a general manager of Hilton Head Plantation in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Ron is a community association lawyer in Princeton, New Jersey. And John Busher, who is our key lobbyist with Cornerstone Government and Government Affairs. Welcome, gentlemen, and welcome everyone else. I am going to turn it over to Hannah to get us started. Hannah?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dawn. And thank you all for taking the time to join us. And for those of you who are watching the recording, thank you so much for taking the time. I'll go through very quickly the agenda for today, which you should have gotten a copy of in your inbox. Just very quickly go over the schedule of events, what to expect, and then we will do a legislative priority overview of the topics that we'll be discussing while we're on the Hill, and then get into what your state groups will look like and how to coordinate with them. And then at the end, there will be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. But if you do have questions as we're going, please feel free to pop those questions in the chat and we will answer those as we see them. So getting right into it. Hi, it's me. I'll be talking about the schedule of events really quickly. So we do have a pretty extensive schedule of events, and don't feel like you need to write any of this down. We will be putting all of this in an email, in the Know Before You Go email and in the summary email from this event. So you will have plenty of copies of what this will look like. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what the day will look like. There are a couple of options. I know that some of you are coming from the DMV area and some of you are coming from as far away as California, Washington, Oregon, Texas. So many folks that are flying in for this event, which is so fantastic. For those of you who will be staying at the Canopy by Hilton Hotel in the Wharf, we will be providing a shuttle service for you to meet at the hotel at 7:30, and the bus will take us to the Capitol. And it will drop us off at the Garfield Monument, which is where we will take our group picture. And then we will walk to the Rayburn building together for our breakfast briefing. If you are coming separately, if you're not taking the bus, you're staying elsewhere, or don't want to have to get down to the wharf, or if you're closer to the Capitol, if you're coming separately in whatever respect that is, if you'd like to be in the group picture, please meet us at the Garfield Monument, which is at Garfield Circle, right at 8 a.m. and we will take that picture. If you are driving separately, or if you do not want, to be in the group photo, feel free to proceed directly to the Rayburn building. We will have CAI staff right on the hill, right there, greeting you to walk you in and direct you to the breakfast briefing. So that will be what the morning looks like, and we will have get plenty of pictures for the day. So if you do miss the group photo, we'll still make sure that we get a photo of you on the hill. Once we have during our breakfast briefing, we'll be hearing from all of our panelists here, as well as we're very lucky we should be able to hear from some legislative staff who are sponsoring some of our priority bills in the legislative offices. So we'll be able to hear kind of a more detailed, in-depth conversation about the priorities, as well as have breakfast, the most important meal of the day, especially for this day, as it's going to be very long and lots of walking. So we'll make sure to feed you properly. Once we have our breakfast briefing, that'll last from about 8:30 to 10 a.m. Once that's done, you'll go off to your meetings with your House of Representatives. Most of those meetings that we have scheduled in the morning are going to be in the House of Representatives, and those are going to be in the buildings that are just adjacent, either in the Rayburn building, which is where our meeting room, CAI meeting room, will be, or in the adjacent buildings, either the Longworth or the Cannon building. So you'll have your meeting with your representative, and then once that's done, you can feel free to come back to our meeting room for lunch. We will be providing a boxed lunch. Or if you'd like to go and try and get the real DC experience, feel free to visit one of the cafeterias, and you'll probably get to bump into some elected officials, which is also very cool. Either way, once lunch is over, then you will have your two meetings. Hopefully, I think we've scheduled most of our meetings with our senators, but your meeting with your senators, and those are going to be in the Senate buildings. Those are Russell, Dirksen, or Hart, and those are to the northeast of the Capitol complex. And we will be happy to show you around. We'll make sure you have a map and everything if you've never been to the Hill. There's no worry, you won't get lost. You'll be able to find it. Once we've had our meetings with our Senate offices, then that's the meetings for the day. After that, we will be providing a return bus to the wharf. So for the folks that would like to either come back to the wharf for our scenic reception and debrief, which is right across from our hotel at the Canopy. It will be held at Cornerstone's headquarters, which thank you so much to Cornerstone for letting us use that venue. It is phenomenal. It's a rooftop view of the Potomac River, which is very beautiful. And we'll have hors d'oeuvres and drinks so that we can debrief about the day and have a chance for you to compare and contrast your experiences from the Hill. So that's pretty much what the day looks like. And again, we'll cover all of this. This will be written down, and I have individual agendas for each person with all of the information that you need. But this is a general overview of the day. Awesome.
Hannah, can I just make a quick comment or two comments? First, the picture on the Hill. So for those of you who are local, who are driving in, you can park at the either the Hyatt, Capitol Hill, or you can park at Union Station and walk over to the circle right in front of the Capitol. And that's where we're going to be, Garfield Circle. That's where we're going to be taking the picture. So if you can get there by 8 a.m., I really would hope that we have everybody in that picture, because it's a great opportunity. The second is there will be an opportunity on the bus for us to talk about some of these issues again and talk about some questions related to these policy issues. We'll also talk about it again at the breakfast briefing. So this is not the only time you're going to be hearing about these policy issues. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, that's correct. So yes, and I do see that there are a couple of questions. At the latest, your Senate meetings will be done by 4 p.m. So if you do have a hard stop That's the latest that your meetings will be ending, as these people typically want to, the staffers typically want to go home right about 4. So, all right. So moving on, really quickly, just a couple of notes to mention about the day. For those of you who are old hat at this, and for those of you who are brand new, just a few reminders here. Please plan to dress appropriately. Basically, the idea of if what your senator or your representative would wear. So business, professional dress, and please plan to wear comfortable shoes. We will be doing a significant amount of walking. So I would leave, I'm gonna leave my stilettos at home, but plan to be walking and dress for that. It is also planned to be, I was just checking the weather this morning, it's gonna be about 55 degrees that day. And if that holds, then plan for that kind of cooler weather, especially those of you from sunny California and Florida. Plan to have a coat and dress in layers, as we'll be running around. As a reminder, the transportation, like I just said, we will have a bus transport from the Canopy to Capitol Hill in the morning, and then a return transport in the evening. And for those who are meeting us, plan to meet at the Garfield Memorial for photos, and then we will head over to the Rayburn Gold Room, where we will be stationed for the majority of the day. Accommodations, if you have not booked your hotel, the Canopy Hotel has been completely booked. Alternative hotel information can be found on the event webpage. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to help coordinate that if you still need that. And then finally, food and refreshments. We will be providing breakfast, boxed lunch, and a cocktail reception for the day. We will have options for vegan, gluten-free, and vegetarian. If you have any dietary restrictions, please feel free to reach out to me and I will gladly make those. That's about it for here. Next up, we're going to get deep into our policy priorities. So I will hand this over to our experts on each of the issues, but please feel free to continue dropping your questions in the chat, and we'll continue to answer them. So let's pass it off, I believe, back to Dawn.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, this year CAI is celebrating our 50th anniversary. We have nearly 46,000 members, representing more than 70 million Americans living in community associations. And we're going to, at this event, have 140 plus advocates, so more than 140 members advocating from 25 different states on Capitol Hill. It's great representation from our membership and great representation when we're on the Hill to help familiarize your members of Congress about community association living and issues that are important to us. So the first issue that we're going to talk about today is the Disaster Assistance Fairness Act. I'm going to turn it over to Peter Christian to give an overview of this legislation and answer any questions you all may have about what this legislation does. Peter?
Thank you, Dawn. Just a couple of things to build on what Hannah had indicated. Many of you have done this before, but this is an opportunity for you to touch base with your elected representatives, and they look forward, to be honest with you, to meet someone who is from their district, who's actually a voter. And not only are they going to want to hear of how many folks are represented by CAI, but if you are a community association manager or represent a community association in a legal capacity, the number of folks who live there who are registered voters rings true with them, because these are folks who will vote for them or against them. You will most likely be with a staffer, but occasionally you will end up with the congressperson or the senator. So, bear that in mind. Dawn teed this up, and we've been working on this particular piece of legislation probably for over a dozen years, and it has gone in and out. And fortunately and unfortunately, every time we get a major hurricane, a major disaster, this pops up again, gets a lot of attention. And unfortunately, it ends up going by the wayside because we don't continue to have natural disasters. But this is not just about the East Coast and the Gulf Coast with hurricanes. It is about wildfires. It is about flooding. It is about tornadoes. It is about earthquakes. All of those types of natural disasters would be covered. And right now, community associations are not eligible to get direct assistance from FEMA. This bill would level the playing field and allow us to get equal standing with FEMA. So what our ask is, there's already a bill in Congress, and they pointed it out, it's HR 3777, that please support that. And also, if you're meeting with a senator, to ask them to introduce a companion bill in the Senate. And again, this is not an East Coast or Gulf Coast bill. This is something that covers all manner of natural disasters, not just hurricanes. So I can't believe that there's a state out there that wouldn't be subject to one of these natural disasters. And unfortunately, we seem to be having more of this, as evidenced by all the insurance premiums going through the roof to cover these types of things. So I'm sure that Dawn or I will be happy to answer any particular questions on this, but this has been an ask for many, many years, and we urgently want you to support this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to put your question in the chat. And while this bill has been around for a number of years, we are having more conversation than ever before on this bill. So that's good news. We are closer to having a Senate sponsor than ever before. So hopefully this will be the year we can move this legislation forward. Okay, let's go to the next issue. We are going to talk about the Making Condos Safer and Affordable Act. This is House Bill 4465. This is the second time this bill has been introduced. It was introduced last Congress following the condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. This bill, what this will do is it will provide a low interest loan program for condominium owners or condominium associations to fund critical repairs to prevent tragedies like the condo collapse in Surfside. This bill was introduced by Representatives Wasserman Schultz and Representative Posey, both from Florida. Representative Wasserman Schultz, her district had the condo collapse. This is a piece of legislation that could be very, very helpful because the low interest loan program would have terms that would be greater than the typical terms that exist right now in the marketplace. So right now, most condominiums, if they need a loan for critical repairs, they could get one with a payback term of 10 years, maybe 15 years. But this loan product would create a payback term period of 30 years, which could make it much more affordable and much more practical for community condominium associations that have really significant and expensive repairs. So this is one of the bills that we are going to be looking for support on. Members of the House of Representatives, we're going to ask them to support the bill that has been introduced. Senate champions, we're going to ask them, your senators, to introduce the companion bill, the same bill, but on the Senate side for House Bill 4465.
And Dawn, yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, we spearheaded this public policy regarding the Chapman Towers collapse well ahead of everyone else. And we can tout that. And I believe the state of Florida has already adopted legislation regarding building safety. And we're already passing around a public policy for reviews by the LAC to further this particular public policy.
That's exactly right. And you raise a good point. So CAI continues to urge legislatures to pass, state legislatures, to pass laws that would require, at a reasonable time frame, building inspections. Once those building inspections are happening, some of these buildings will be determined that they need critical repairs. So in order to fund those repairs from those building inspections, this will be a great tool and a great solution for these condominium association buildings.
And Dawn, clarify for me, will this bill benefit both the condominium association as a whole to be able to borrow money, and also the property owners, if they get special assessed, would they be able to get a low interest loan in order to pay that special assessment?
That's exactly right. It creates two loan products, one for the homeowner for special assessments, the other for the condominium association. John, yes.
Hey, everyone. Sorry, I haven't introduced myself yet, but I just wanted to add to this discussion. I'm John Busher with Cornerstone Government Affairs. Unlike most state legislatures, and most of you probably already know this anyway, but the federal government operates on a 2-year congressional session. So while these bills have been introduced this year, and we'd love to see them enacted this year, we do have time until the end of next year, before the congressional session ends. So there's a lot of time to work on this in order to get them enacted into law. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not like in a lot of state legislatures where you have to rush at the end of each year because their session ends. There's a 2-year session on the federal congressional calendar.
Good point.
Excellent. Thanks, John. I'm going to ask our staff team, do we have any questions in the webinar chat on this particular bill that would benefit from answering for everybody?
Hi, Dawn. We do have one question from David Ward. It's regarding this particular piece of legislation, and his question is this bill intended to assist individual unit owners in their own lending for special assessments, or is it intended to assist associations obtaining lending for their association operating budget?
Okay, great question. So it's intended to provide two loan products, one for the individual for paying special assessments specifically related to critical structural repairs, and the second for the condominium association or housing co-op to fund critical repairs for their structure, not for operating. If it's part of the operating budget, if it's part of the operating budget and it's specifically for critical structural repairs, then likely this loan product would be for them. But it has to be for the critical structural repair. And this bill, the way it's been introduced, is it's only a couple of pages. It's a very simple bill. This would have to go through HUD's regulatory process to create the process for these loans and the requirements. So some of those answers, David, will be kind of devil in the details, and we would be sure to work with HUD to help define those criteria. Any other questions? All right, let's move forward and talk about the Corporate Transparency Act. So a bill passed in 2021, the Anti-Money Laundering Act and the Corporate Transparency Act. This bill creates a registration structure for nonprofit and for-profit corporations that have less than 20 employees and less than $5 million in annual assets. This requirement appears to apply to community associations. The requirement is a registration requirement with the Department of Treasury, providing beneficial ownership information about the board of directors of the condominium community association or housing co-op. So what would be required would be a registration process. So the board would have to submit a report with the board members' names, the same type of information that a board submits to open a bank account for their community. So it would require the name, address of the board member, as well as a identification, whether that's a passport, a driver's license, or something like that. And this is an annual registration for each board. This is not just for community associations. It just so happens that we believe it applies to community associations. So it sounds like maybe it wouldn't be a big deal. It's just an online registration process. But there are a couple of nuances where CAI believes this is maybe going to be a difficult requirement for community associations to comply with. And that requirement, or the reason for that, is because if a board either makes a mistake, doesn't file their reporting requirements of the beneficial owners of the community, the board and the individual board members could be responsible for criminal and civil penalties. Civil penalties of $500 a day up to $10,000 for incorrect filing or for not filing, and criminal penalties as well. Further, the way the law reads right now, if the board changes, if anything changes among one of the board members or among the board, that change needs to be filed with the Department of Treasury within 30 days of that change. So things could constantly be changing and create a situation where there are some compliance issues related. Now, the reason for this Corporate Transparency Act is for the federal government to identify corporations that are being used as shell corporations for money laundering and terrorist activity. Well, community associations are at low risk for money laundering and terrorist activity. And that there's actually been a statement that has come out from the banking system and from the Department of Treasury saying they believe local nonprofits are very low risk for money laundering and terrorist activity. So we are urging our advocates to talk with your members of Congress and ask for two things. Ask for a delay in the implementation of the Corporate Transparency Act and these reporting requirements. Right now, the implementation is effective January 1st, 2024. All new corporations must file this beneficial ownership information with the Department of Treasury. Existing corporations will have to file by January 1st, 2025. So all of the community associations that we know would have to submit their filing by January 1st, 2025. If we feel like there's an issue with many community associations not knowing that they need to comply with this requirement, that they're going to need to submit this information. So we would like to have a delay so at least we can help educate community associations about this requirement. It also, by the way, affects small businesses that meet that criteria that I mentioned up front. Less than 20 employees and less than $5 million in assets. We're also asking for an exemption for community associations. There is currently an exemption in the law that exempts nonprofit organizations that are determined by the IRS to be tax exempt. So for those community associations that may have a 501c4 tax exempt status, they're exempt from this requirement. And we believe that exemption was likely intended to apply to all nonprofits, not just the tax exempt nonprofits. So we're looking for an exemption. We're also looking for a delay This is a little bit of a complicated issue. Some of you may have already heard about this issue. If you haven't and you have questions, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Dawn, another point to make, it's in many cases, it's difficult enough to get folks to volunteer for a board position. To ask them to register with the federal government and provide identification to the federal government would tend to have a chilling effect on getting those volunteers to come forward even more so. So just another weapon to use to say that, we are very, very low risk, and this is going to have a deleterious effect on our ability to recruit volunteers for boards.
Excellent point. Thank you. Phoebe, are there any questions in the chat on this issue that I can help answer?
No specific questions at this time. If anyone does have any, please feel free to enter them into the chat for us to discuss.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, Phoebe, you're up next to talk about the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act.
Hi, everyone. We are very excited about these two pieces of legislation that CAI is currently supporting. CAI for many years has been a member of the Professional Certification Coalition. More than 100 trade associations and nonprofits like CAI are members of this coalition. Each of the members of this coalition have some form of certification program for the industries that they provide education and advocacy resources to. This specific bill that is bipartisan and bicameral, as well as cross-filed in Congress, will expand eligibility for tax favorable 529 savings plans and allow for these savings plans to not just be used for professional degrees, bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees, other types of professional degrees, but also for workforce training programs and credentialing programs like KMICB's CMCA, CAI's AMS, PCAM, or CERM's credentials. We have been on Capitol Hill, Dawn and myself, with the Professional Certification Coalition and other members of that group, heavily advocating for co-sponsorship of this important piece of legislation to expand access to what these loans are able to cover when it comes to the future of individuals' professional careers, whether it is a career pivot, just career opportunities, or somebody looking to grow within their own field. So at this time and next week, while we're on Capitol Hill, we will be continuing to ask offices that are not current co-sponsors on this bill to co-sponsor this piece of legislation. We're very excited to announce that since this bill has been introduced, more than 70 members of Congress have co-sponsored the House piece of this piece of legislation. And in fact, just yesterday, the House Committee on Ways and Means addressed this bill with members of the Professional Certification Coalition who went and testified in front of the committee to urge their support of this bill. So we're very excited and hope to see the needle move even further as we continue through this congressional session. So anyone who is a manager with a CAI credential would have access to any 529 savings plans for future programming opportunities when it comes to maybe achieving their next certification within the industry. And anyone whose clients utilize our credentials could certainly promote this opportunity as well. So happy to answer any questions, but we're very excited to be a part of this critical mission in the United States at this point in time.
Awesome. Thank you, Phoebe. I don't see any questions. So Todd is asking a question. Can we get a list of legislators that are not current sponsors of targeted legislation as to not waste time? Yes. So we will have that information for you. When in your packet, you'll know who you're meeting with, whether they're a co-sponsor or not. So you could just thank them or ask them to be a co-sponsor. Great question, Todd. Thank you. All right, I am going to introduce John. So John has been on the Hill for a long time. He's been on both sides. He has worked in the halls of Congress, not just as a lobbyist, but for, you'll tell us, John, I think for the Senate. And John has been a lobbyist for decades as well. So he knows what those offices are going to be looking for from you. He knows how to help you anticipate what you can expect in your meetings next week. So John, I'm going to ask you to share some of your wisdom and experience with our advocates. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Phoebe. Hi, everyone. My welcome to my fellow lobbyists writ large across the country. We're going to welcome you to DC next week. We look forward to your advocacy and support of these issues that we've been working on. As Dawn said, my name is John Busher. I work with Cornerstone Government Affairs. We're a large bipartisan, bicameral lobbying firm. It's been around for about 21 years. I joined Cornerstone last year, but I have been working on a multi-client basis with other firms for the last 20 years and was in-house at a corporation lobbying for 10 years prior to that. So while I'm relatively new to Cornerstone and we started working with CAI at the beginning of the year, the first time that I addressed a group that was involved in an advocacy day was in the summer of 1997. So it's been a while, and I hope I'm not aging myself, but this is critically important to what I believe is having a voice in our democracy. And so we're grateful that you're taking the time to come up here and help us work on these pieces of legislation. I'd just like to go through kind of what to expect. And I apologize to some of you who have done this before. This may be self-evident and maybe even a little bit repetitive from past years, but I think it's important in kind of going through the detail of how a meeting might look once you show up and what to expect. Peter covered a little bit of this earlier, but one thing that I would recommend is that once you know the group that is going to go to a meeting, to try and huddle beforehand, just to kind of get the cadence down for how the meeting is going to go and who is going to speak and what they're going to speak about. You want to have that laid out so it's fairly well known before you go in, so it doesn't seem as ad hoc. So, for example, if you're going in and meeting with staff, you would say, "Hey, Bob, why don't you kick the meeting off and start talking about this? I'll jump in and talk about this, and then we can all sort of chime in on this, whatever the third issue is, if there's a third issue." It just gives you a little bit of structure to the meeting before it happens. Once you get to the office, I'd also I think this will be drilled into your head by Hannah and Phoebe and Dawn, is to try and get there early. Be prepared for some lines outside of the office buildings. All the office buildings require you to go through magnetometers. And so you have to be prepared that some people are going to, forget their phone and step out, and there's other, large groups that are coming in that day. And so sometimes you can get stuck in a line. So just make sure, to the best of your ability, that you try and arrive as early as you can for the meeting. There's no penalty for arriving early to a meeting. Once you arrive at the office, you'll check in. There's usually a young staffer sitting at the front desk that you check in with, mention your name, who you're there to meet with, and they'll confirm that meeting, and then probably get on the phone or send a text or an email to the staff or the member. As Peter said, you could be surprised that a member might jump out and say, "Hey, I'd love to meet with you guys. Come into my office." But also don't be surprised, and I say this as someone going on 56 years old now, that someone in their 20s comes out and is the person that you meet with. I've had meetings with junior staff that seem just out of high school, but they're actually just out of college, but that have a responsibility in the office. And don't be taken aback by that. Don't take offense to that. Be wary that a lot of young staffers wield a lot of influence with their members in their opinions and the memos that they write and the recommendations that they make. And so you want to treat everyone equally with whom you meet with, and just be prepared for that. Something else to be prepared for is where you may be meeting. I don't know if you've experienced this in the past, but sometimes you think you're going up to Capitol Hill and you're meeting with a member, and you're going into this sort of gilded room. It's got big comfy chairs, and you sit down and you talk business. More often than not, you'll be in a small office. Sometimes you'll be asked to meet in a hallway. Sometimes you're asked to meet in a coffee shop that's loud. But just wherever it is that you're planning on meeting, take it for what it is. Do your best, considering the environment, and make your case. I just wanted to throw that out there so you're prepared. I think in most instances, probably 90% of the time, you'll be in a small office with a desk and some chairs. Sometimes there's a lot of people, there's not that much space, and you get stuck out in a hallway, but don't take offense to that. With respect to kind of how the meeting will go, I'd encourage you to, as you would in any meeting in your businesses, to try and make some sort of connection with the person that you're meeting with. engage in some icebreaker, small talk. Yeah, ask them where they're from. Do they live in the state or the district? How long have they worked with the member? You know, what issues do they work on? You know, those kind of things, just for a couple of minutes to kind of ease into the meeting and provide a connection with the staffer. You have to realize that you are probably one of anywhere from 8 to 10 meetings that staffer could be having that day. They tend to click through them in 30-minute intervals, if not quicker, throughout the day, in addition to whatever meetings they have internally and with their member of Congress. So you want to know that you're not in a rush. You're always given the opportunity to present what you have to present, but also be mindful of the time of the staffer. You'll be able to tell if they're getting antsy, if they want to kind of close down the meeting, if they're not talking. But you are allotted, I think at all of these meetings, you should be allotted 30 minutes. So that doesn't mean you have to be in the meeting and talking for 30 minutes. But it does mean that is what's sort of allotted on their schedule. So feel free to be deliberate, to talk calmly and efficiently about your issues, but also just keep an eye on the clock. Sometimes staff appreciate a brief meeting as opposed to something that's drawn out, but I don't want anyone to believe that they need to rush or get through something quickly just because they feel as if the staffer is either not paying attention, not writing notes, or whatever it might be. They are responsible to you as a constituent to listen to what you have to say. And I think Peter said it well. You're a voter and you're in their district. You are making a recommendation about legislation that you believe that their member should consider. And they need to take that into account. And almost all of these staffers are very bright, very effective, very smart, and they know kind of the politics around things as they sit. I would say that just to ease your minds, if you're nervous or worried about the meeting, that you are going to know more about how HOAs and condo associations work than any staff that you're talking to, for the most part. You're the ones that live this. You're the ones that have real life examples. And so some of these staff may be very familiar with, they say, my aunt or my mom is the president of a condo association, so I'm familiar with this. And so that provides some level of connection. But you're going to know more about sort of the day-to-day operations and what impacts you probably more than they will. They are going to be interested in how this legislation affects you. And that will give them the reason to support the bill. So you don't need to necessarily be an expert on the nuances of where this bill sits in committee and how is it going to get to the floor and how are we going to get this into law by the end of the year. All of that is what Dawn has sort of hired us to do at the end of the day. What the value that you're bringing to this fly-in is to show that there are people and there are voters that care about this in the district and in the state where this member represents, and they're asking that member, that senator, to take some action on that legislation, and that's the purpose that you'll be there for. And I think you'll find a very welcoming, for the most part, a very welcoming audience once you start talking. At the end of the meeting, I don't know, you can always invite them, invite the member to come visit the HOA or the condo if they're in the district, and be sure to leave behind any materials that are going to be provided by CAA and contact information so that they can reach out to you following the meeting. So that's a little bit of sort of the structure of how things are going to work there. I'm happy to answer any questions now or later, but I appreciate your time, and I really, really appreciate your help and the time that you're taking out of your personal lives to come up here and advocate on behalf of CAI.
Awesome, John. Well done. Thank you so much. A couple of points I want to emphasize. So when bring your business cards, because it will be helpful for you to hand your business card to the person who is at the reception desk so that they know who they're meeting with. If you have a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, get the business cards together and say, this is the group that's meeting with with whoever you're meeting with to introduce yourselves. And leave those business cards behind. So please, please bring your business cards. Pick up a business card as well. There are business cards at the offices. You'll be able to pick up a business card of whoever you're meeting with so that you can follow up with them. John did mention meetings are going to be around 30 minutes, no more than 30 minutes, probably between 20 and 30 minutes. So don't expect more than that, and be mindful of your time. Make sure you say you're with CAI. Make sure you talk about your communities, the community clients you serve in the district that you're meeting with. So you will be meeting with your member of the House of Representatives and hopefully both senators. Well, you'll be meeting with staffers from those offices. Hannah, what else on this topic do we need to discuss?
Yes, thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you, John. Your input is always invaluable. I'll just add, we will be providing legislator backgrounders for each of the offices you'll be meeting with, so you have a little bit more information if you're not familiar with your congressperson. And there will be room for you to take notes. That said, we will be asking you to take a survey at the end to tell us all about those meetings and give us kind of a little bit of a direction on where to follow up. So there's an opportunity for you to tell us, you know, this office was extremely interested in learning more about the Disaster Assistance Fairness Act. Definitely follow up with them. So definitely feel free to take notes as you're having those meetings. If you do not have business cards, don't worry. We've made sure to put Dawn's business card in every single one of your folders, so that way she can always get contacted for follow-up as well. One other quick thing, we will be asking you, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. Please take, if you're comfortable with it, take a picture of yourself with the meeting, in the meeting, or even if it's just outside with the nameplate of the person of the office that you met with, to post on social media. I'll cover this in just a couple of minutes. We have a hashtag to use on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those kinds of things, because they love getting, these legislators love getting shout outs. And we will make sure to put their information in their bios as well. So plan to do that. I think that's it then for this section, unless there's any other questions that we have in the chat. I'm not sure.
I will just emphasize, we're going to be meeting with each of the we're going to be meeting at the briefing on Thursday morning, and you're going to see who you're with, which state group you're with. You know the state that you're with, but you'll see the group that you're with, and you'll have an opportunity to talk with each other, connect with each other to determine who's going to talk about what, who's most familiar with a particular issue, who wants to talk about a particular issue. So you'll have that opportunity to get organized on Thursday morning. And you'll have plenty of materials to be able to keep with you so that you can continue reading what the issues are and leave behind some of the packets as well in the offices. We are doing, are we doing an email before so that people know that we're coming to their offices? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yep, absolutely. So CAI will be sending out information to each office that we'll be meeting with on your behalf before the meeting with information. So they'll have a little bit of context about who they're meeting with, that you are a constituent of theirs, and that you'll be talking about the community association housing model, as well as the state facts and figures. We will be providing them as well. So yes.
You're on mute, Dawn.
Thank you. Do we have any questions in the chat that would benefit from answering for everyone?
Dawn, a number of people again are just asking, as we've discussed, can they receive the one-pagers in advance? Will they know their fellow attendees in advance? On Monday, we are sending a know before you go email, which has what you need to be doing and everything you need from 7 a.m. to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It will have all of these resources that we are discussing for you. So be on the lookout on Monday for this email from our office with everything we've discussed today in it, this PowerPoint everything. So any questions you may have at this time, or any items we've discussed that you are looking for between now and next Thursday, it will be in this Monday email.
And who is that email coming from?
Hannah will be sending it.
Is it
I'll be
Hannah?
sending it.
So you look for an email from Hannah Engber
Yes.
on Monday.
And since all of you are here, you've all received my emails about this webinar. So you should have my emails. It'll come the same way that I have sent all of the reminders for this webinar. Dawn, you're muted again.
Are there any other questions? Any other comments from any of the staff team? John, Peter, any comments?
I just wanted to thank the team for the excellent work. This is a monumental undertaking. It does not happen overnight. Hannah, Dawn, Phoebe, Ben, John just do an outstanding job with this year after year in setting this all up. And they are a tremendous asset to all of us, and please use them. And there is no such thing as a dumb question. Look up in advance the representative that you're meeting with, whether it's a congressperson or a senator, and find out what their passion is, and find out if you have something on equal footing. They always like to hear that they're doing a good job, and it gets you in good stead with them. So, don't always ask, always say, hey, I really like that you supported this particular bill or that particular policy. Which gets your foot in the door a little bit more, but rely on the staff. They've got it between the numbers, and use them as a resource. They're wonderful to work with.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you, John. Thank you. Well done, Lula, Ben, Phoebe, and Hannah. Great work. All of the advocates. I look forward to seeing you next week. Travel safely. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. And hopefully it's going to be sunny. We're going to have a great time together, and we really look forward to seeing you. Thanks for making the commitment. Look forward to seeing you.
Yes, and before everyone goes, just highlighting, don't forget to get social with us. We have the hashtag for all of social media, hashtag CAI Summit 23. And you can follow us on all of the social media channels, and we will be doing kind of a little bit of a prep leading up to it for you to keep an eye out for to get involved with. Make sure you're following us and everything like that. And then I wanted to just ask very quickly if there were any more questions in the chat that we could answer before we end here. If you think of anything afterwards, or if you're watching this on demand, you can always email us at government@caionline.org. But are there any other questions? I'm looking pretty far away. I can't seem to see if there are any other questions in the chat right now. I don't think so. But thank you again for joining, and thank you again to our sponsors, Enterprise Bank and Reserve Advisors, and we can't wait to see you in DC in just 8 days.